I think Pochita is a primordial fear of some kind or variant within Chainsaw Man. I know that sounds absurd, but hear me out. I have a bit of an explanation to help build context for it, right? There's a bit for me that kind of goes into this thought process that becomes a lot more interconnected over time. And the more we've actually seen from part 2, the more I start to at least genuinely believe it to a degree. This isn't meant to be revolutionary or to change your perception of the story, but more so to build a better picture or understanding towards the devils, the horsemen, and primordial fears, and how they're not just the hideous, monstrous devils or creatures that we would imagine them to be, which I don't think is necessarily wrong, but they're a lot more complex, a lot more nuanced, and we've already seen versions of it. But currently we're building more and more to a better understanding of these devils, and really powerful ones. The first one that really caught my eye and kind of reflecting on it made a lot more sense to me over time was Makima. I think just by her demeanor, her actions, her attitude, she's very fearful. You can look at her as a big bad villain, yet she's kind of anything but that, at least in the sense of what her final goals were. See, her journey towards it was death and destruction, control and manipulation, but the final point that she was going towards, it seemed a little bit odd. She wanted to erase war, death and hunger, the 3 remaining horsemen, and you might notice that she didn't mention the 4th horseman within there, which funny enough is actually herself, Conquest. But here's to kind of relay the full picture of that just a little bit. Her goal was to erase those very horrendous things within history, yet she even offered up herself to become one with Chainsaw Man, that she too would be devoured by him eventually, but she never added that in a valuable way that made sense to connect it to her ulterior goal. It was something that more so she wanted personally. Now, whether she meant it in the same act as getting rid of these hideous things or something that was more selfish for herself doesn't really matter. Either way, in her mind, all 4 horsemen of the apocalypse would be erased from history. Now, because of how hideous these things are, it sounds like a good thing. Does this make Makima a good person? No, but it definitely makes her more complex than we originally thought. She's not just a complete one-note psychopath. She has a deeper understanding to the world, to her own intentions, and the fact that she can be a little bit selfish. See, the Control Devil's true dream was to build relationships where she was equal with others, and obviously she couldn't do that. The power that she had would not allow it. But then I started to question, why would a horseman need a goal like this to begin with? And it just kind of leads me down that same idea once again, that we really don't understand how they operate, how they think, how they feel, how, at least in our terms, human they kind of are. Pochita is the one that supplied this type of information that really gave us a better understanding of how the Control Devil functioned, and I was curious on why. How would he know this? Is he too some sort of horseman? Is he a primordial fear, or is it just the fact that he's been in contact with them and fighting against them for who knows how long? It doesn't end here or end with Makima. Confirmation for it is actually doubled down even further with a character known as Yoru, the War Devil. See, the War Devil's introduction is a little bit funny because we kind of recognize that they are not the strength that they should be, that they are a lot weaker than what is actually portrayed. Being a horseman of war, you would think that the power that comes with that would be exceptional, groundbreaking, fearful, yet they are anything but that. They are strong, don't get me wrong, but the level of what a horseman can be, not so much. And there's probably a really good and simple explanation for this, is because Chainsaw Man has quite literally ate all the weapons that the War Devil can actually control, thus making them weaker. See, war isn't just one singular thing, it is many singular things. It is a combination of different instruments of war. When you combine those together, you probably get the War Devil. When you separate them and erase them from history, you can imagine how much weaker the War Devil would become. And thus, seeking out the Chainsaw Man Devil to throw up nuclear warheads seems like a viable option, and makes perfect sense to regain that strength, to regain the things that have been lost, and to ultimately manipulate new weapons in return, which is something that the War Devil has actually given to us. The more you become connected and feel guilty about turning things into weapons, the more powerful they will actually be. So that gives us a reason why Yoru is a lot weaker, why the War Devil has to seek out Chainsaw Man to throw up previous weapons. But what it doesn't actually explain is how subtle the War Devil is. Yoru is not the individual that I thought they would be. Yes, they are destructive. Yes, they are terrifying when they want to be, but the conversation between Asa and Yoru becomes personal, eerily understanding. I think just by the way Yoru talks, you can tell that they are out of touch with the current world that is going on. We don't know how long the War Devil has been out of commission, how long the War Devil has been existing. If this is the first time that Yoru has been within the human world after thousands of years potentially, it would make sense that they are a bit out of touch. touch. But they seem curious. They seem genuine. The conversation that they're having with Asa is personal, and it helps build such an incredible identity for the War Devil, not being this monstrous, hideous horseman of the apocalypse, but someone with ulterior motives, someone with endless value. And this was the exact same way that Makima was actually shown to be. Hideous, terrifying, controlling, manipulative, yet all she wanted was to build relationships that were equal, that were loving, that were caring. She so desperately wanted a family. If the Control Devil or Makima of all people can have this, so can the War Devil, so can Yoru. And just based on the conversation that Asa and the War Devil had, with Yoru feeling so odd about their name, their identity, I think that's exactly what they want. To have their own identity, to not be a combination of multiple different weapons that make them them, but also just who they are. The value behind Yoru as a name and how it was described and how defensive the War Devil got makes me believe it to be so. In some way bringing a very valuable point of concern for yet another horseman. Okay, so Makima, Yoru, more complex than we originally thought, right? What has this got to do with Pochita being a primordial fear? Well, I thought about it for quite a bit, and I was in between two different options. Either Pochita is a horseman in some way, shape or form, he's just not labeled as one, or he's a primordial fear. I don't think Pochita just being a Chainsaw Man Devil really makes sense with the ability that he has to erase things from existence. That's a very powerful thing, and one could argue that is a primal fear. See, when you Google primal fears, there's a lot of different answers that come up, a lot of different interpretations, but usually they're connected to your biology, your chemistry, and it's something that you cannot really change. There's a lot of intricacies on how that actually works in terms of biochemistry. I'm not too confident on myself, but one that really sticks out to me and kind of just makes perfect sense with what Pochita does is that one of the highest primal fears that humans face is extinction. Quite literally the fear of annihilation, of ceasing to exist. The more I thought about this, the more it started to make sense. And that if we have a horseman that is directly correlated to death, then it would only make more sense for one to be a different version of it, correct? A more existential, a more biology-fueled fear of death. If this was the case, what would it even mean? Well, it'd help us build a bit more of a character for Pochita, a bit more of an understanding. But it would also show that at least some variation of a primordial fear, or maybe just a higher version of the horseman that is meant to provide balance of some kind, can too have a dream, can too be misinterpreted as being fearful and evil and destructive. If Pochita is extinction, literally erasing things from existence, ceasing to exist, the version we see of them is so far from it. You know what Pochita's dream was? To be hugged. And he never could have had that because he was so strong and fearsome. He's fought against the four horsemen before. The only way I see four horsemen versing another individual and losing, or having a tough time winning, I should say, is if they're going up against a primordial fear. Personally, I put the Darkness Devil at the top, being stronger than the four horsemen of the apocalypse. However, I think Pochita being the extinction primordial fear works really well with his desires. He wants to see other people's dreams fulfilled. He wants to see their true identity come out and to be acknowledged, to be accepted, to build this very beautiful and wholesome relationship. Quite literally taking people's core wants and needs over everything else that might be so tiny or minuscule within themselves and bring it out onto the surface so he can fulfill it. The complete opposite of what his purpose is. Just like Makima's, wanting to have a relationship, wanting to be equal to others. Just like Yoru and potentially wanting to have their own identity instead of being just the amalgamation of war, a build-up of different instruments of death combined together. The purpose of me talking about this was to invoke some understanding for myself. I've always been very curious about Makima. I'm even more so curious about Yoru, which has provoked my curiosity towards Makima, and then that has jumped over towards Pochita. I can't explain why he would have the form of a chainsaw. If he even is a primordial fear that is extinction, he obviously is not full power. But something tells me he doesn't have to be. He's more than confident and happy to be one with Denji, to be a hybrid. Even if it comes at the cost of his full power, even if he's in a much weaker state, defeat, he's still very powerful. This would kind of also better explain somewhat how the horsemen are the only ones that can remember things that have been erased. Nuclear weapons have been gone for quite some time. Yoru remembers them. Even Makima herself remembered things that had been erased. The only way that I feel like this would be theoretically possible is either Pochita is not at full strength to erase things completely, meaning that the horsemen, being as powerful as they are and having their fingers everywhere, still remember those things, or in some way the horsemen are related to Pochita as a primordial fear or some sort of variant horseman. Overall, I think the true value of this conversation is that there is a lot more to these devils than we would actually think. There is a lot more to add to their identity, to their value, to their wants, to their needs, and it does not stop at Denji. It does not stop at Makima, and it will not stop at Yoru, the war devil. The horseman that is death may be a different story, just quite literally destruction and nothing else, but you never really know with Fujimoto. Building up these characters has been nothing short of amazing. Even though they should be this, they're offering so much of that, and I wholeheartedly love it. I for one am very excited to see where Fujimoto takes his characters. What explanation does he give Pochita? How do we build Naoyuta, the new control devil, in a really interesting and intuitive way? And how much emotional connection do we bring for Yoru as the war devil? Sooner or later, the horseman that is hunger or death will have to appear, but I'm sure he's going to do them justice just as much as the others. We can only wait patiently and see. With that, however, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe, I greatly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.